What's going on, everybody? Anthony Cervino here at RotoWire.com, and I'm going to give you 5 players primed to go off in fantasy football week 4. We're going to start with Marvin Harrison Jr. And we drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. late first round, early second round, believing he was the second coming. And we've seen a glimpse. After a rough start to the year, nearly getting blanked by the Buffalo Bills, he goes ballistic against the Rams, 29 PPR points. We know he dropped 4 for 30 and 2 touchdowns. And then last week, a spike matchup, one of the best matchups you can get on paper against the Detroit Lions. And he was okay, caught 5-11 targets for 64 yards and another score. But we didn't draft Marvin Harrison Jr. for a meager 17.4 PPR points. We drafted him for those games like he gave us in week 2. And he could potentially have another one of those games this upcoming week against the Washington Commanders, who've been absolutely scorched by enemy wide receivers all season long. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Malik Nabers, Jamar Chase, all gave us at least 22.3 PPR points against the Commanders. And Marvin Harrison Jr. has a realistic chance to give us similar production, if not more. To put things in perspective, this is how bad the Commanders have been. They've given up a combined 44 receptions, 582 yards, and 9 touchdowns to the wide receiver position through the first 3 games of the year. The next worst team that have given up that many touchdowns, the Rams, for 6. Let's look for a monster game out of Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's go to another wide receiver that could go boom. In week 4, Jaxon, Smith, and Njigba. And we know who the number 1 in this offense is. It is DK Metcalf. But in the right matchup, both of these players we know could give outstanding fantasy production. Let's scale back to week 2 against New England. That was a game, remember, it went into overtime, and both Jaxon Smith and Njigba and DK Metcalf gave us over 20 PPR points. Let's stick to Njigba here. He gave us 23.7 that day, 12 of 16 targets for 117 yards. Now, the other 2 games Njigba has played, not very productive, not very involved. 2 targets in week 1 against Denver, 3 targets last week against Miami. The matchup, once again, gets really, really soft. Similar to New England, who are 27th when it comes to fantasy points conceded, right? Very easy matchup. The Detroit Lions are one of the worst. They are 31st in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. In fact, the 2 games that JSN struggled in, Denver and Miami, Denver's the number 1 unit against wide receivers, Miami's number 10. This is a soft matchup, and I expect Geno Smith, Jaxon Smith, and Njigba, you want to even throw DK Metcalf in the mix. They're all going to pop. Here's the fun part. This game against Detroit is being played in Detroit. Well, why is that fun? It's fun because in the past 2 seasons, the Seattle Seahawks and Detroit Lions, they've met in Detroit. You want to know the final scores of those games? They're shootouts. 37-31 last year, 48-45 the year before that. When you have this many points scored, there's a lot of throwing of the football, which means there's going to be a lot of fantasy points scored, especially by the wide receiver position. I'm expecting a nice bounce back boom game from JSN. Now, let's go to the running back position. And the first one I really like, Aaron Jones, number 1. It is a revenge game against a team that let him go, the Green Bay Packers. And Aaron Jones has 3 straight games at least 11.8 PPR points. I know people are worried about Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler has his role, and he's going to get some run as a change of pace back. But a lot of these games, right, all 3 of them, in fact, Minnesota had control. Ty Chandler may have gotten some extended run because Aaron Jones is a little bit older, and maybe they don't want to run him into the ground. But let's not get things mixed up. This is Aaron Jones's backfield as long as he's healthy. Now, week 1, 18.9, week 2, 11.8. This past game against Houston, week 3, which is a tough matchup on paper, Aaron Jones goes off for 25.8. 19 for $102 on the ground, 5 of 6 targets for 46 yards and a touchdown. Aaron Jones, back-to-back games now with at least 6 targets and 5 receptions and 36 yards. He is being used as the in-between-the-tackles runner. He is being used as a receiver out of the backfield. He is everything to this football team. And talk about red zone opportunities. Aaron Jones has 8 red zone opportunities, including 4 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line. And now you get this outstanding matchup, and I think it's outstanding against the Green Bay Packers. Now on paper, they're ranked 19th, but I don't think they're as good as their ranking. I think they're a little bit worse. Let's take a look. Saquon, we know, smashed, gashed, 3 touchdowns in the season opener. Jonathan Taylor goes for 103 yards and another 30 yards as a receiver. If he scores a touchdown, he's giving us over 20 PPR points. Last week, Green Bay looked good. Well, who did they play? They played the Tennessee Titans, and we know that offense can be a mess at times. And they shut down Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. And Tony Pollard, for what it's worth, has been a very, very productive running back in fantasy football, and Green Bay shut him down. They shut him down more so, in my opinion, because they did not believe they had to focus on containing Will Levis. But these terrific running backs like Barkley and Jonathan Taylor and these teams that know how to run the football, they punished the Green Bay Packers. And we know Aaron Jones is a very good running back. And we know this offensive line from Minnesota can open up the holes. And I believe they go and punish the Green Bay Packers. Look for another outstanding game from Aaron Jones as he plays his former team. You know, he's had this one circled on the calendar for a while. Let's go to another running back I absolutely love this week, Brian Robinson. Now, Brian Robinson, for where we drafted him, has been terrific. He's given us at least 10.7 PPR points in every game played this year. Now, week 1, 17, week 2, Giants, 14.6, 10 last week. Austin Eckler was also extremely involved last week, but Austin Eckler last week on Monday Night Football also suffered a concussion, and he's already ruled out. Now, we believe that Brian Robinson is going to see an extended workload. With Austin Eckler sidelined, all they really have right now in the depth chart, I believe, is Jeremy McNichols. Yeah, remember him? He's there. Every running back opportunity, at least the lion's share of them, are going to go in the direction of Brian Robinson. And when Brian Robinson gets opportunities, he runs away with them, scoring a touchdown in 2 of 3 games. And in the game he did not score in, which was week 2 against the Giants, he went for 136 total yards. I believe this is a game where Brian Robinson puts it all together and gives us his first monster outing of the year against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals defense, it looked good against the Rams. It is not that good of a defense. In fact, it is one of the leakiest defenses in the NFL. We've seen every running back to play this defense score at least 13.3 PPR points. James Cook, Kyron Williams, and last week, this Arizona front seven, they were smashed, gassed, and sliced and diced by the Detroit Lions duo of Montgomery, 21 PPR points, Gibbs, 16. This is the one-man show of Brian Robinson, and this could be the first game of the year where not only does he begin to separate himself from Austin Eckler now that Eckler's sidelined, but this is going to be the first game of the year where he really pays dividends for his fantasy football managers. I could see him dropping 20 in this matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. Let's close this out. And I think this guy is my favorite tight end this week, Cole Kmet. And we know the story. Everybody was scared of Cole Kmet. They were scared to draft him because of how much run Gerald Everett was getting this preseason. They were scared of him because of the connection that Gerald Everett had with Shane Waldron. That project only lasted a game. Remember in week 1, Gerald Everett outsnapped Cole Kmet 33-25. Since then, Kmet dominant, 50-25. Last week, 68-28. When it comes to targets, back-to-back games, 5 and 11. And obviously last week, Cole Kmet went crazy. 10 of 11 targets, 97 yards and a touchdown. And this offense, Caleb Williams, it's starting to look good, right? I know Caleb made some silly mistakes. He's going to have some growing pains. But let's put it in perspective. First 2 games, Tennessee, Houston, tough matchups. The Colts, very leaky defense overall, and Caleb Williams went off as a fantasy player, and he heavily leaned on Cole Kmet. And I expect that to continue because this Bears offense, they get to build. They get to take their confidence and build in another outstanding matchup against the Los Angeles Rams. And this defense can't stop anybody. And now they get Cole Kmet coming off of a great game. This Rams defense, by the way, 28th against tight ends. They haven't been able to stop anybody. And I don't think that's going to start this week. I think this is going to be a game where this Bears team really gets the confidence going. Let's take a look at the Rams. Like Laporta, McBride, Elijah Higgins, Saubert. Like nobody really popped yet against this defense, but they've all scored high floors in fantasy. If Cole Kmet gets the volume he had last week, and I believe he does, because when he was leaned on by Caleb Williams, I think that gives Caleb some confidence. Then I think Cole Kmet could possibly put together another complete game. I'm not saying Cole Kmet goes for over 20 again, but the tight end position has been a cesspool. And I think he could be one of the top fantasy scorers at tight end in week 4